Good Wednesday morning.
Good Wednesday morning, Mark. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I mean, you know what? We learn, we live, learn about dealing with the things that are right in front of us, which is really the most important thing, which is what I've been doing, and it's been helping an awful lot. So
that's good.
So what's new in our world today? Anything aside from same as yesterday and Groundhog Day, or what?
Groundhog Day the way it is the last couple of weeks. I think we're in episode 27?
8.
So 28. Yeah, episode 28. You're right. We're doing a lot of good stuff. A lot of people have been reaching out, thanking me and you for being on every morning. So I do appreciate that.
Right.
And it's nice just to help out people, share information, and get through the day by day.
Exactly. And it's just, I mean, I get emails, I get texts and stuff, and people are real excited about, waking up to seeing us. It's something that they're starting their day with, right? And I think it's extremely cool that we're getting that stuff, right? And so I'm really excited about that, and I'm also pretty excited about who we have on our call today.
We have a special guest, so why don't you introduce him?
We do. I want to introduce the gentleman we're having on is Dr. Jim Fanale. He is the CEO of Care New England out of Rhode Island, and Jim is my brother, and we've known each other all our lives. So Jim, thanks so much for coming on. I know you've got such a heck of a schedule, and thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to do it.
Yeah, just make sure that I introduced you correctly as the CEO of Care New England. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is.
Cool.
Good. Now, Jim, I want to know all the secrets about Dave when he was a kid. That's really what I want to know.
I don't think it's something we can publicly say on this station, so I think we better leave it there. I have known him for at least 50 some odd years.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's been a couple more, I think. If you don't remember, you must be older than I am. But anyway, that's beside the point. Enough of the sibling rivalry. And talk to us about what's going on, and talk to us a little bit about what you actually do, where you're at, and the hospitals you're involved in, and then go into, if you would, where you're at with COVID-19.
Yeah, so Care New England's an organization that we have 3 hospitals, a large provider group, about 550 providers, a VNA, a bunch of other little companies, but it's 3 hospitals principally in Rhode Island. Remember, Rhode Island is a fixed population of about 1 million folks. Our 3 hospitals, there's a medical surgical hospital in Warwick, which is sort of more southern to Providence, which is about 220 beds. We have a full array of med-surg services there, rehab hospital. We do everything there you can do, short of heart surgery. We do emergency angioplasty, those kinds of things. We have a women and infants hospital in Providence Central, which is about a 300-bed hospital, and we do 80% of deliveries in the state. We are the only NICU in the state. So my niece works in a NICU. We're the one in the state, 80 beds, and we do 8,000 deliveries there a year. So pretty big, right?
Right.
And then Butler Hospital is a psychiatric hospital, and it's not your regular psychiatric hospital. It's a hospital on a sprawling 168-acre campus, multiple buildings. We take care of every possible disease that affects people's behavioral health. Everything from inpatient, about 160 beds. That's big in this business. It's big. Lots of outpatient programs. It's a huge operation. Importantly, so Butler's kind of like the psychiatric hospital of the state. Women and infants is the OB hospital. Remember, we're doing 80% of deliveries. And we're the academic institutions for Brown University Medical School. So all the OB training's done at W&I. Not all, but predominantly all.
Right.
The psychiatric residency training. So we train all the medical students in the state. Lifespan Hospital, our competitor, is across the street. They have 3 or 4 med-surg hospitals. So they're the trauma hospital, the med-surg hospitals in Providence Central. Mm-hmm. We're about a $1.2 billion company. We have 7,300 employees. So we're pretty big, financially challenged, as most health systems are, and we emerged from a financial calamity a few years ago to, or at least we were break even a few years, and then this thing hit. We had a hospital that we owned that we had to close, which is always politically and economically a challenging thing to do. We pulled that off a couple of years ago. and we have a very strong relationship with Brigham and Women's Hospital. So we have a tertiary relationship, partner relationship with them, where some of their providers are in our hospitals, and we have a collaborative relationship with them. So they're pretty big. Today, we're in the midst of this COVID mess, which really started to hit us about a couple months ago. And what's happened there, you find yourself having two full-time jobs. One is running the business you've got, which has been financially devastated. The business in healthcare is devastated. And then you're also trying to gear up to make sure you save lives and protect your staff. So it's really a divergent job now with two primary responsibilities. So as we emerged from this financial calamity, and we weren't having a great year the first 5 months. Remember, our fiscal year is October 1st, September 30th. So we weren't having a great year, having a little bit of a slow year. We thought we'd make it up, and then this thing hit, and this devastated us. So right now in healthcare, I would say everyone's volume's down to about 50% of normal. It means all your inpatient beds are empty. Half of them are empty. The outpatient arena, you start thinking about the ambulatory stuff, screening mammograms, people aren't coming. Elective surgeries, elective colonoscopy, that's all been shut down. It's been shut down to be prepared for the crisis and have enough ICU beds and hospital beds, but it's also been shut down because people ain't coming. Right. They just don't want to come. They're scared.
Right.
And so we're dealing with that, trying to stay afloat financially at the same time, making sure we have a 15-bed ICU at Kent that we can 15 ventilators, right?
Right.
We're prepared to add 45 beds by going throughout the we can staff up to 61 ICU beds. We don't do that. We're now ready for 31 or 32. We got 18 patients there now, right? We may even have an ICU at women and infants, which is something we don't do. We do neonatal ICU, right? Not adults, right? So it's really expanding to a surge. How do you get to 120% capacity? Can you get there? We're ready to do that. We also, Lifespan has an alternative hospital. Remember the Jacob Javits Center in New York City?
Yes.
So at the convention center in Providence, they're about ready to open a 500-bed site there. Ours is a 333-bed site in Cranston in an old bank building. The bank building's been cleaned out. It's 123,000 square feet that now has beds for 332 patients. In 2 weeks, they built this thing.
Wow.
They cleaned up 123,000 square feet. Just think about it. And they had to bring all new wiring, all new cable, and all new oxygen. Oxygen's the tough because remember the old copper pipes?
Yep. You
got copper pipes out the goddamn place for oxygen. So we're ready to open that up if we need be. But with capacity being only 50%, I don't even know if we'll ever use these beds. The point being,
we're in New York, New Jersey, where we've had an increase in the last 3-4 weeks, right, in our hospitals and all the extra convention center hospitals that they built. We're finally seeing some type of leveling off. Where are you within that curve?
Yeah, I would caution you. I'd like to know if Hackensack Medical Center is full, but I bet you it's not. I bet you they got 30% capacity still, but they've opened these sites because we want to be prepared. Now, in the Worcester site, Massachusetts, there are homeless people there now. That's where we're congregating positive homeless patients. Right. But where we are, we've been kind of flat for a week. Mm-hmm. The whole state's been kind of flat. Remember, this is a small state, right? And we've been flat, with probably 15 to 18 people dying a day. I know it sounds alarming, but that's what it is. But our ICU volume at Lifespan, we talk every day, it's been about the same with 50 to 60 ventilator patients. At Kent now, our census is usually in the 180s, it's 130. And there are 40 or so COVID patients in the hospital now, 40. Right. Half a dozen or 10 in the ICU, but it's been relatively flat for the last week. So based on these models, is a surge this week? Is it next week? We kind of think we're there now. Massachusetts is about 150 people are dying a day there, but most of it's older folks, and they've done a lot of testing, so they have a higher number so they're like third in the country in terms of number of patients that are positive, but they're doing a lot of testing, and that's really the struggle now is how do we test people when we don't have the equipment to test.
So what about, you talked about Massachusetts and Rhode Island, what about Connecticut and anything, do you know anything about those as well as the surrounding states and rest of New England?
Yeah, I think that Connecticut, the closer you get to the city, the closer you get to a maelstrom of activity, right? The closer you get, like New Haven and those parts, I think they're probably sort of in the same boat. I'm astonished that we're not more devastated, but I think the issue is one, we did a lot of social distancing. That does work. Number two, New York You got 8 million people, I joke, living within a square block of each other. It really, and remember, where does everybody come from overseas? Kennedy Airport, right? So
Right.
quite honestly, if it was going to happen anywhere, it's going to be New York City, right?
Absolutely.
So they'd be devastated, you know. But I think in Connecticut, and the reason Connecticut, Dave, close to New York City is probably more prevalent. But I think Massachusetts and others are finding that we got a lot of cases, but it's not overwhelmed the healthcare system. We haven't run out of ICU beds. We haven't run out of ventilators. And I think that's New York City. Have you watched the? I mean, I spoke to I think I told you this critical care doctor at LIJ, Long Island Jewish, and he talking about his weekend there, and it's just astonishing what these guys are living with there because it's been such a calamitous thing. So,
right. And do you have enough PPE where you are?
No, I mean, we have finally enough surgical masks. So yes, I think last week we got 500,000 surgical masks delivered. And the state told me yesterday they have 2 million. They'll give us a few 100,000. The N95 masks, which are the protective masks, we don't have enough. We might have enough in a couple of days, but we've been conserving it. Right. If you think about this is the United States of America. Okay, I have a surgical mask I wear. I've worn the same one for a week. Right. Our healthcare workers are working the same way. We brought a piece of equipment in yesterday that can sterilize used masks.
Wow.
95. The supply chain issue is just a big issue. So we have PPE, then 95s are a little short, getting better. It's the testing kits. We have all these different testing machines. It's the kits. I would imagine New Jersey and some of the really highly prevalent OB systems, like in Hopkins,
right,
they're screening every pregnant woman for COVID when they come in.
Right.
We want to do that. We're the leading OB center in this region. We haven't had enough tests, but I think because we were able to finagle them over the weekend, I think by tomorrow we'll be able to screen every pregnant woman. They come in, you act as if they're COVID positive, right? And then when they're negative, you can move them differently because there's a prevalence of during labor untoward outcomes. Plus, you remember, if you think about the physical interaction of a woman in labor, she could be there 8 hours with nursing directly with them. It's
right.
not like an office visit of 12 minutes.
Right.
They're constantly with that person. So we need to know if they're positive.
Right. So a lot of things we hear, Jim, is we're talking about, I hear that, pneumonia is down and the regular flu is down and all that. And it's being classified as COVID. Is there truth to that? I mean, what does all that mean? I mean, because let's face it, there's a conspiracy theorist and there's the people that are going both ends of the spectrum. What do you think about that?
So I think that anybody comes in with a cough and a fever and anything else is probably COVID positive. I don't know what the false negative, false positive rates are. Give you an example on the science of testing, right? Now you're doing the science of antibody testing. The science is so new with a very low prevalent condition, like 2 to 3 or 4% of the population may be COVID positive, right?
Right.
And the test is not that valid. The positive predictive value of that test, meaning the chance of positive test is positive, is 50%. So you got to look at the science of the testing.
Okay.
I mean, there was an article in the San Francisco Chronicle today that said that the first COVID positive patient must have died there February 6th. And they're saying, how could that happen? I think it's true. I think a lot of people, we had people early in the crisis, 4 or 5 weeks ago, one of our CMOs called me, 2 COVID patients died on a Saturday morning. They came in 5 hours before, rapidly downhill course and died. That's COVID. Doesn't happen in other diseases. So I said, but they're not positive, they're not COVID. I now think back and think they probably were. Okay. So I think the flu is not as mortal. This disease, remember, 85%, it's not a problem. You got a cough, a little cold, and it goes away, runny nose.
Right.
It's when it really, how come it bothers some more than others? When it gets to its full force, it's a devastating virus. It is just unimaginable what this does. It ruins your lungs. You go into kidney failure. You clot your arteries. It is a devastating immunologic event that we just don't understand. So I think, Dave, it's more prevalent. I think if people come in, even our POIs, you've heard that persons under investigation, those are the ones that come in with symptoms. I kind of think most of them are positive. Okay. I got a call yesterday about one of our workers. He's home. His wife works in a nursing home. He's coughing. He's tired as hell, and he can't breathe. So I had the leader of that organization, call him and tell him to go in and be seen. He has COVID. If you have fatigue and a cough, those are the hallmark symptoms. And then if you have a little breathing disturbance, those are the hallmark symptoms. A dry cough, fatigue, and you have trouble breathing.
So one other thing I've heard from a lot of people is, oh, I must have had this in November. I had this in January. I had this in February. Is that possible? Where these people had a minor case of it?
I think in February, maybe. November, December, I don't think so, but the truth will come out at some point. I mean, I had a bug in February. I've never been sick like that before. I was home. Did I have it? I don't think so. But I think there are earlier cases that we didn't know about that might have been COVID. I don't think as far back, Dave, as November. February is possible. March is certainly possible.
Right.
And there may be people we sent home. But if someone comes in, like I told you about the cases, and rapidly deteriorates in a 6-hour span, that's this disease. If you get on a ventilator, your chances are greater than 50-50. You're not getting off.
Right.
So we talked about locally. Jim, what do you know, and what can you tell us nationally? Is there anything that you have insight to nationally as far as what's going on? Because they're opening up Tennessee after April 30th. They're just opened up Georgia this week on Friday, I believe. Not completely, but they're starting to do that. How does that affect the rest of the country, and what else is going on?
I mean, it's hard to try to ignore your own personal lives with this, right? There are some theorists that'll sit there and say 30, 40,000 people are going to die from this. There are other people will say because of depression and suicide and other things, the 30,000 are going to die from that. I do believe, just my belief, right, that as you look at the obituaries and people died unexpectedly at home, I think people with coronary events are not coming in. Mild chest pain, they say, I'll take care of it at home, and they have an arrhythmia and they die. So the question is, what's the death toll from all the restrictions and everything? I think that the guidelines that they talked about last Friday about the gradual opening up of the world every 14 days probably makes sense. I think the financial devastation to the country is enormous, to the world, right? So I think, truth be told, I think that slowly opening up the world is the right thing to do. Okay, it's changed everyone's lives, but I think the sooner they get to, the better. The sooner we get back to a normal environment. When are we going to start opening up elective surgeries? Well, I kind of think probably we're a couple of weeks away from that, probably in your region too. But
Right.
Everyone's going to be tested before you operate on them, right? And will the patients come back? People are still scared. They're scared.
Right.
Yeah.
I got a question from someone just texting me. They wanted to know, how early were you notified as a CEO or in charge of this healthcare system about COVID? Was it in January? Was it in February? Was it before
January. I mean, I have this infection control lead who kept bugging me in February to tell our IT folks she needed a web page on our website, and so I sat there going, okay, all right, we'll get there. But then about 2 days later, I said, I think we better do that.
Right.
So I was started in January. Really got started seriously thinking about it. February got more serious. Then we established our group in February, and we've been on a phone call 6 days a week, every day. Sundays sometimes, right? We got 30 or 40 people every day. What's the status today? What are we doing next? Preparing for the surge, preparing for the extra hospital. Now we're training volunteers to be able to be nursing and nursing assistants if we get stretched staff-wise. That's another sequentially we've worked through that.
What can we do as people that are staying at home? Is there any, aside from wearing masks, we have to go to the stores? Is there anything that we can do to either spread the word or to talk about it, or to, like we're doing this live broadcast every morning during the week? I do one every Friday as well. But is there anything else that we can do to help, the world? It sounds strange, but that's really good.
No, but I listen, I even at home, I try to ask my family not to be overly paranoid about it. Okay. Because, so if you're driving down the street, I think socially distancing still makes sense. Doesn't mean you can't go outside, right? You should go outside. Number two, remember, if you're 6 feet away from somebody, even without a mask, theoretically, that's protective, but that's why you're wearing a mask. Because you're wearing a mask because some droplet gets spewed all over you. The surgical masks are not 100% effective. Remember, you're wearing a surgical mask. If everyone wears a surgical mask, you're protecting them from you. Right. You're not protecting you by wearing a surgical mask. But if everybody wears them, you're protecting each other from each other.
Right.
So I think the mask wearing is a good idea, and I think that the social distancing. Someone driving down the road in a car wearing a mask, I go, why are you doing that? Because you don't really need to do that. You're only with yourself. Now, I guess you could say, well, I'm trying to keep my car clean. Well, you're probably the only one in the damn car. So I think we have to also be rational people and try to keep our anxiety down to a reasonable level. But, frequent hand washing, masks, and social distancing. And then when things get relaxed, and it's going to sound really goofy. You're talking about doing help the world. Just be nice to everybody, right? Don't be a jerk. Be kind to everybody. I think that I actually mean that.
Right.
Because we're in a mess together. We had a big issue here with our union yesterday, and it's not for public what I said about it yesterday, where there's this verbal attack about we don't care about our staff. And I told their leader, you're coming at me personally because that's not true. You tell your people to stop. We can get through everything if we stick together and don't work and don't attack each other. So I think you're right. That's what you need to do.
Right. And then what happens, there's been news reports in the last 24 hours that this could come back in the fall and winter of this year. Is that a real concern, or is this something now that's going to be like the flu where we have to get a vaccine, every year?
So I think if you listen to Tony Fauci, he's right. He'll say, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of stuff we don't know. My concern is it may rebound to be a bad flu. It might come back again.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of treatments being tried, and remdesivir might work.
Mm-hmm.
The answer to this whole one is that the vaccine has to be developed. The problem with the vaccines I think the science and technology to develop a vaccines aren't that complicated, but it takes months to test it. Right. So I got to take a vaccine, I got to test it on day, make sure he doesn't die from it. That's a phase 1 trial. You got to make sure you can tolerate safety. But I think they're going to accelerate, and you need double-blind controlled studies. I'm going to vaccinate 1,000 people. I'm going to vaccinate with a placebo 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And see what the answer is. And that's what they need to do. That's why he's saying it could be 18 months. Maybe it's 15 months, but we need a vaccine. And that's really what's going to be the hallmark of getting this thing over with.
Right. And actually,
does the virus mutate? Does the virus change? We don't know that either.
Right. So my kids actually have a question. They want to know if you think the day camps and sleepaway camps will open up this summer, being that school's been closed now until the end of the year.
They might. There's a discussion that kids are relatively safe with one another, but you can't keep kids apart from each other. You can't.
Right.
You just can't. Personally, I hope they do.
Right.
The day camps and stuff not only will lead to you and your family not becoming more psychotic,
right.
But they need to get out and be normal. So I'm hoping that. So if it plateaus, let's say it's plateauing. Let's say in about 2 weeks your numbers are down. So it takes us to early May.
Right.
2 weeks more, they'll start opening restaurants where there'll be 30% capacity, right? It's going to be weird. But maybe by June, it's another 2 weeks that they're talking about schools. But I'm hoping that the camps and things can open.
Right.
What are they going to do on beaches? People need to get out. So I'm hoping that will progress.
Okay.
What about major sports, Jim? I mean, they're going to open up. Are they going to open up at all? Are they going to be without fans, or what?
I think they should open up without fans to start, because people need some. You need some deterrence. You need something to pay attention to. I mean, watching the news, it's just terrible. And thank God for Netflix. I mean, this has probably been a boon to Netflix, but. Bottom line, I think they'll start out, Dave, as baseball said, I think they're going to start out with no fans. And, maybe they'll do it in Arizona and Florida. Maybe they're realigning things. I think the question is, they opened up the stadiums, would everybody come? I don't think so. I mean, in movie theaters, what I think they're going to do is they'll open up movie theaters and there'll be designated chairs, right? 6 feet apart, you can sit. I already know what they're planning for restaurants. It's going to be 6 feet apart from a couple at a bar. And you're going to have about 30 to 35% of the tables will be open. Question, can restaurateurs make it on that volume, right? Can they make it on that volume? If they can, that's right. So I'm hoping that by summertime, that at least it's back to normal.
Right.
I mean, I tell my people here, I only have one wish of all the stuff.
And that is?
Ask me what it is. I want to go to a bar and have a draft beer or 3. That's what I'm doing day one when it opens.
Dave just wants to go to a baseball game and have a beer.
Well, I get it, but I think baseball games, I think it's going to be July before you get any fans anywhere.
Right.
I do. The question, the NFL's been spared this. What are they going to do?
Right.
For instance, I think golf can open up, right?
Right.
I mean, it's one sport where you could be in, I don't know if golf courses are open in New Jersey, but Only one person to a cart if you want to take a cart. Otherwise, you walk. You can distance on a golf course, right? You can distance. You could probably get golf courses to 80% of normalcy. I think construction, they shut it down. They should open up construction. Right. Most of those people can distance and wear masks. Right. So I think where the risk is lower, they need to open certain stuff. I think construction, golf courses, they could probably open up. There's risk. It's not zero, but it isn't like having 60,000 people going to watch the New York Stinkies play in Yankee Stadium.
Right. Excuse me? What'd you say about the Dead Sox? I'm sorry. As you guys can tell, we're on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to our sports fans.
Yeah, I mean, in Massachusetts, we've had 15 or so championships in this century, but you guys have had, I think, one. But anyway,
let's bring up the news, right? We had Gronk coming back out of retirement to go play with Tom Brady again, right? But they're not playing New England. So how do you feel about that?
I think Tom Brady's great. He's 43 years old. For people to think that he's going to play to 45 and be the same, and they're giving Belichick a hard. Listen, come on. He's 43. He wasn't as good last year as the year before. Gronk, people watched Gronk 2 years ago. He's the greatest tight end ever to play. But if you watch, he was not himself. He was slower. He's gotten the crap kicked out of him. I think coming back he's got to gain like 30 pounds because he's pretty svelte right now. He's a great player. Brady's a great player, but there's a limited shelf life to a 43-year-old quarterback.
Right.
That's true.
Okay? I mean, you guys are going to draft another quarterback for the Gents, right? Because they're going to give up on the other guy.
Yes.
I would imagine so. I mean, and the draft is tomorrow. They're doing it virtually, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, your football teams are pretty pitiful, right?
Yeah, they suck. Yeah, they suck. They suck. But I will tell you that the one great thing about the New York—
You got the Knicks. You got the Knicks.
Excuse me?
You got the Knicks. That's right.
We have the Knicks. But understand one thing about baseball and that, let's see, Brady, Alex Cora, cheaters? Yeah, not in New York.
Yeah, because you didn't figure out how to do it. That's why.
Well, we did it before anybody. We got caught. We had to stop in 2015. But anyway,
that's why when you ask, bringing it back home, sports is something you can put your mind on. And we joke about this, but think about the rest of your whole region. Right. I mean, sports pretty critical part of your social backbone in New York City and New Jersey, right?
Yes.
It's not there. Imagine if they started playing games in the Yankees or the Mets started playing games with no fans, everybody watched TV. Everybody would watch.
Yep.
And then you're going to start talking about stuff. Right. It's not talking about death and disease and economic collapse. I think we need a venue that changes that. I think behaviorally, socially, we need that. So if they opened up baseball and started playing without fans, I think quarantining the baseball players for 4 months, not seeing their families, that's not going to work.
No,
that's not going to work. But I think because people need a respite. They need you know what I mean? We have a meeting every Tuesday about growth of our organization. And I got this note. We should cancel that. Should we postpone them? I said, no, we need to talk about stuff other than COVID.
Right.
We got to talk about other stuff because it's consuming every minute of every day. I mean, I told you, I'm in a meeting with our legislators at 10:30, our senators and representatives about what we need. I mean, I got to kind of get that one right, but I will.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, thanks so much. Is there anything you'd like to add? Because we're running up the end of our show, right, Mark?
Yeah.
No, I think, again, I think that our lives are intertwined with this Mets. It's no different for you guys and us. I think it's a little bit worse in your region because the New York City devastation. I think, this is going to sound terrible, but probably not. The political leaders have done what they can do.
Right.
I think, dear listeners, hindsight's 2020. Don't pick on who should have would. So the Trump, should have done something in March. We were doing things day to day. We make decisions now that are different than what we did 2 weeks ago. Okay. We built 1,000 hospital beds that we're never going to use. I hope I never have to use them. But you had to do things, you had to make decisions, and we had to be ready, and we're ready. And now we need to move by and get over it.
Right. Is there anything? What I like to ask, the last question I'd like to ask everybody is, what can I do to help you?
To stay safe.
We will do that.
We'll do that. Jim, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you coming on. Nice to meet you.
Yep.
Dave, always been a pleasure. We'll see everyone back here tomorrow morning, 8:45.
Hey, Jim, stay on for a sec.
Yep.
We'll talk to everyone soon. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, we'll be right back.